On a cold night in Atlanta, a weary black woman steps out of her office, ready to head home after a long, exhausting shift. But her plans shatter when she hears soft sobs echoing from the empty street. There, curled up on the sidewalk, is a lost white girl in a designer dress, trembling and alone. She knows that taking the child in could bring trouble, questions, accusations, assumptions. But she also knows one thing for certain: she can't just walk away. What she doesn't realize is that this choice will lead to the biggest opportunity of her life. The night air was thick with the scent of rain-soaked pavement, the distant hum of traffic blending into the faint chatter of late-night wanderers. Nia Carter pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders as she stepped out of the towering glass office building, the fluorescent glow of the lobby casting a cold, artificial light onto the empty sidewalk. Her body ached from hours hunched over spreadsheets, her mind sluggish from staring at numbers that never seemed to add up in her favor. She let out a slow, exhausted breath, rolling her shoulders as if she could physically shake off the weight of the day. Another shift at Thompson & Green Investments, another 12 hours of proving herself to men in pressed suits who barely acknowledged her existence beyond what she could produce for them. She adjusted the strap of her worn-out handbag and started walking. The streets were quieter than usual. Atlanta never truly slept, but there were pockets of the city that dimmed as the night stretched on. This was one of them. The neon flicker of a liquor store sign cast jagged reflections on the wet pavement. A lone street lamp buzzed overhead, its light weak and struggling against the darkness. Storefronts were shuttered, windows dark. The occasional car sped past, its headlights slicing through the quiet. Nia's stomach clenched with hunger, a dull reminder that she still needed to stop by the corner store before heading home. She mentally listed the essentials, maybe some rice, a can of beans if the produce wasn't overpriced, a few tomatoes. Her wallet was already stretched thin, but she was used to making do. Then she heard it. A soft, uneven sob. She froze mid-step, her pulse kicking up as she scanned the sidewalk. The sound was small, fragile, almost swallowed by the vastness of the empty street. But it was there. Nia turned her head, eyes narrowing as she searched the shadows. At first she saw nothing but the usual, a row of trash bins pushed against a brick alleyway, the dull glow of an open 24 hours sign further down the block. Then, just beyond the glow of the street lamp, nestled near the curb, she saw a small shape. A child. Nia's stomach dropped. The girl was curled up on the edge of the sidewalk, her knees drawn to her chest, delicate fingers gripping at the fabric of her dress. Even from a few feet away, Nia could tell the dress was expensive. Soft pink satin, embroidered with tiny white flowers, but now it was stained with dirt, the hem dragging on the grimy pavement. Golden curls cascaded over her tiny shoulders, a stark contrast against the dark concrete. Nia hesitated. This wasn't just a lost child. This was a white lost child. Her pulse quickened as her mind immediately jumped to the worst-case scenarios. If she approached her, if someone saw, if the wrong person assumed the wrong thing, a black woman standing over a crying white girl in the middle of the night, she knew how that story would end. But then the girl let out another tiny, hiccuped sob and the hesitation vanished. Nia took a slow step forward, keeping her voice soft. "Hey, sweetheart. Are you okay?" The girl flinched slightly, as if she hadn't noticed Nia until that moment. Her blue eyes, wide and glassy with tears, darted up to meet hers. I want my daddy," she whispered, her voice shaking. Nia felt something tighten in her chest. She crouched down, careful to keep her movements gentle. "Where's your daddy, baby?" The girl sniffled, rubbing her tiny fists against her flushed cheeks. He was supposed to pick me up, but he didn't come. I waited and waited, but he never came." Her breath hitched on the last word, her little body trembling. Nia glanced around the street again, hoping, praying, that some frantic father would come running, that this wasn't as bad as it looked. But there was no one, just the distant rumble of a car engine, the occasional murmur of voices from a block away. She exhaled slowly. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The girl hesitated, as if considering whether to answer, before whispering, "Lily." Nia nodded, offering a reassuring smile. "Okay, Lily, it's really late, and I don't think it's safe for you to stay out here alone. How about you come with me for the night, just until we can find your daddy in the morning?" Lily's tiny brows furrowed, uncertainty flickering in her teary gaze. "But what if he comes looking for me?" Nia sighed, rubbing a hand over her forehead. "If he does, sweetheart, he won't find you sitting alone in the cold. It's not safe." Lily hesitated for another moment before slowly nodding. She reached out, slipping her small, delicate fingers into Nia's hand. The warmth of her tiny grip sent a strange, protective ache through Nia's chest. "Come on, baby," she murmured, squeezing Lily's hand gently. "Let's get you somewhere warm." The walk back to her apartment was silent. Lily clung to Nia's side, her small legs working to keep up, her breath still uneven from crying. Every now and then she sniffled, and Nia would glance down, offering a reassuring squeeze of her hand. She was still trying to push away the thoughts clawing at the back of her mind. What if this child's father was looking for her right now? What if someone saw them together and made assumptions? What if— No, one step at a time, get the kids somewhere safe, figure out the rest later. When they finally reached her apartment building, a modest aging complex tucked between a laundromat and a barber's shop, Nia unlocked the door and flipped on the overhead light. The space was small but clean. A single bed pushed against the far wall, a wooden chair near the window, a tiny stove in the corner. It wasn't much, but it was hers. "This is my home," Nia said softly, leading Lily inside. "It's not big, but you'll be safe here." Lily stepped in hesitantly, her blue eyes scanning the room before she swayed slightly on her feet. That's when Nia noticed the flush creeping up the girl's neck, the way her little body trembled more than before. A flicker of concern shot through her. "Sweetheart, are you feeling okay?" Lily wobbled slightly before whispering, "I feel hot." Nia didn't hesitate. She crouched down, pressing the back of her hand to Lily's forehead. The moment her skin met the girl's, her stomach dropped. She was burning up. "Damn it," Nia muttered under her breath. Lily let out a small whimper, her tiny body swaying. Without thinking, Nia scooped her up, carrying her over to the bed. "Shh, it's okay, baby, I got you." She grabbed a washcloth, soaking it in cold water before pressing it gently against Lily's forehead. The girl whimpered, but didn't pull away. Nia sat beside her, changing the cloth, checking her temperature, whispering soft reassurances whenever she stirred. She stayed awake, watching over her, exhaustion gnawing at her own body, but refusing to let herself sleep. Outside, the city moved on, but in this tiny room it was just the two of them. And Nia knew with a deep, undeniable certainty, whatever happened next, she would not let this child be alone. The dim glow of the overhead light cast a dull warmth over the small apartment, flickering slightly as Neil settled on the edge of the bed. Lily stirred, her tiny body curled into itself, soft whimpers escaping her lips. Her fever hadn't broken. If anything, it had worsened. Neil pressed the cool cloth against the girl's forehead again, feeling the unnatural heat radiating from her delicate skin. A pang of worry twisted deep in her gut. She had been awake for hours, listening to the faint hum of the city outside, the occasional siren wailing in the distance. The room felt unbearably small, suffocating under the weight of uncertainty. Nia had no medicine, no thermometer, no clue how high Lily's fever had climbed. All she could do was sit there, wiping the sweat from the child's brow, murmuring soft reassurances whenever she whimpered. Lily shifted, her small fingers twitching against the sheets. Then, in a hoarse, barely audible voice, she mumbled, "I want my daddy." The words were like a punch to the chest. Nia swallowed hard, her throat dry. She had no answers to give, no way to explain why Lily's father hadn't come for her, why she was here in a stranger's bed instead of wrapped in the arms of the man who was supposed to protect her. All she could do was run a gentle hand over the girl's damp curls and whisper, "I know, baby. We'll find him. I promise." But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at the edges of her mind. She thought about calling the police, but something about it didn't sit right. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was experience. Nia had learned long ago that the system didn't always work the way it was supposed to. A black woman calling in about a lost white child? She could already hear the suspicion in their voices, the unspoken accusations. Where did you find her? Why do you have her? She'd seen stories like that before. Stories where women who looked like her ended up handcuffed for doing nothing but the right thing. No, she had to be smart about this. She needed to wait until morning, when businesses opened, when people were awake, when she could figure out where Lily had come from and how to get her back to the right place without making herself a target in the process. Nia leaned back against the headboard, exhaustion pulling at her limbs, but she didn't let herself close her eyes. She stayed awake, listening to the girl's soft, labored breaths, watching the faint rise and fall of her tiny chest, waiting for dawn to come. The morning light seeped in through the cracks in the blinds, painting long golden streaks across the faded wooden floor. Nia's body ached, her head throbbed from lack of sleep, her muscles stiff from sitting in the same position all night. She rubbed at her eyes, blinking against the brightness of the morning, and turned toward Lily. The fever had broken. The little girl was still pale, her cheeks flushed pink, but her breathing was steadier now, her small body no longer trembling beneath the covers. Relief washed over Nia like a tide, leaving her lightheaded. Lily stirred, her eyelashes fluttering before her blue eyes cracked open. She looked up at Nia, disoriented, then let out a small, confused hum. "Hey, sweetheart," Nia said softly. "How are you feeling?" Lily blinked a few times, then swallowed. "Better," she murmured. Nia smiled. "Good. You scared me for a minute there." Lily sat up slowly, her tiny hands gripping the edge of the blanket. She glanced around the room, her small face scrunching in curiosity. "Where are we?" "This is my place," Nia answered. "You were really sick last night, so I brought you here to keep you safe." Lily frowned, as if trying to piece together hazy memories. Then her expression changed. Panic flickered in her wide blue eyes as she suddenly clutched at the sheets. "My daddy, did he come?" Nia hesitated. The truth was sharp in her throat, bitter and unkind. "No, baby, he didn't," she said gently. "But we're going to find him, okay? We'll figure this out." Lily's lower lip wobbled. She didn't cry, but the weight of disappointment settled heavy in her small frame. Nia reached out, squeezing her tiny hand. "Do you remember anything about where you were before I found you?" Lily sniffled, thinking hard. "I was waiting," she whispered. "By the big store. Daddy said he'd come, but he never did." The big store. That wasn't much to go on, but it was a start. Nia exhaled, running a hand through her curls. She needed a plan. Before she could say anything else, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The sharp vibration made her stomach clench. She reached for it, dread curling in her gut when she saw the name flashing on the screen. Marcus Thompson, her boss. The CEO of Thompson and Green Investments, the man who barely spared her a glance unless he needed something. Her fingers trembled slightly as she answered. "Good morning, sir," she said, forcing her voice to stay level. Marcus's voice came through, clipped and impatient. "Morning, Carter. I need you in the office immediately. We have a situation." Nia's heart sank. She wasn't scheduled to work today. If he was calling her in, it meant something big. "Sir, "No excuses, Carter," he snapped. "I need you here, now." The line went dead. Nia sat frozen, gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. What now? She couldn't leave Lily alone. She couldn't take her to the police, not yet, and she sure as hell couldn't call in and say, "Sorry, sir, I can't come in because I have a lost white child in my apartment." She turned to Lily, whose small hands were still tangled in the blanket. The little girl looked at her with quiet curiosity, as if sensing the shift in Nia's energy. Nia's pulse pounded against her temples. She had no choice. She had to take Lily with her. Nia's grip tightened around Lily's small hand as they stepped into the towering glass doors of Thompson and Green Investments. The air inside was crisp, laced with the scent of expensive cologne and freshly brewed coffee. The rhythmic tapping of keyboards, the hushed murmur of business conversations. It was the familiar hum of corporate life, but today it felt different. Today she had a child clinging to her side, a child who didn't belong in this world of deadlines and numbers. Her pulse pounded as she led Lily toward her cubicle, keeping her head down, praying no one would notice. If anyone asked, she'd say Lily was her niece. It was a flimsy excuse, but better than the truth. The truth was too complicated, too risky. She settled Lily into the small chair beside her desk, kneeling to meet the child's curious blue eyes. "Sweetheart, I need you to stay here, okay? Be really quiet. I'll be right next to you." Lily nodded, swinging her leg slightly. "Okay, Miss Nia." Nia hesitated, brushing a curl from the girl's forehead, still warm from last night's fever. She hated leaving her like this, but she had no choice. Straightening, she turned to her computer, forcing herself to focus. The numbers on the screen blurred as she typed. The weight of the morning pressed against her temples, exhaustion gnawing at her. Then a sudden commotion. A child's voice, clear and bright, rising above the quiet hum of the office. "Daddy." Nia's breath caught in her throat. The office fell into stunned silence. She turned sharply, her heart slamming against her ribs, just in time to see Lily standing in the hallway, her tiny finger pointing at the large framed portrait hanging on the wall. The portrait of Marcus Thompson. Gasps rippled through the office. Employees exchanged bewildered glances, whispers igniting like wildfire. Nia's blood ran cold. Lily turned to her, beaming. "Miss Nia, that's my daddy." Panic surged through Nia's veins. She scrambled to her feet, rushing toward the child, placing her hands gently on her shoulders. "Sweetheart, come here," she urged, her voice low, pleading. But it was too late. The damage was done. A middle-aged man with glasses, Henderson, one of the senior executives, adjusted his tie, narrowing his eyes at Nia. "Carter, is this true?" His tone dripped with suspicion. Before Nia could respond, her phone vibrated violently on her desk. She grabbed it, dread curling in her stomach the moment she saw the name flashing on the screen. Marcus Thompson. Her fingers trembled as she answered. "Sir, Nia." His voice was sharp, breathless, frantic. "My daughter is missing. I have the police searching everywhere. Why are you calling me right now?" Nia opened her mouth, but before she could utter a word, Lily reached up, snatching the phone from her hands with surprising speed. "Daddy." A stunned silence. Then, Marcus's voice, suddenly hoarse. "Lily?" Lily giggled, pressing the phone closer to her ear. "Daddy, I'm with Miss Nia. She found me." Another pause, a heavy, loaded pause. Then, Marcus's voice, barely above a whisper. "Where are you?" Nia swallowed hard, her throat dry. "We're at the office, sir." "I'm coming." The line went dead. Nia stood frozen, phone still clutched in her hand. Around her, the office buzzed with murmurs, eyes darting toward her, toward Lily, toward the framed portrait on the wall. Judgment, curiosity, suspicion. Lily, blissfully unaware of the chaos she had just unleashed, looked up at Nia, her blue eyes bright with excitement. "Daddy's coming!" Nia exhaled sharply, kneeling down, gripping the child's small shoulders. "Lily, listen to me. When your daddy gets here, you tell him exactly what happened, okay? You tell him I found you alone and brought you somewhere safe." Lily tilted her head. "But that's what happened, Miss Nia." Nia forced a smile, though her stomach churned with unease. Good girl. Because deep down she knew this wasn't going to be that simple. Marcus Thompson stormed into the office 15 minutes later. He was a man who commanded attention, even in silence. Tall, broad-shouldered, his tailored navy suit impeccable despite the chaos undoubtedly raging inside him. His dark brown eyes, usually calculating, were wild with something raw and unguarded. The moment he spotted Lily, everything else disappeared. "Lily." His voice broke on her name, and in an instant the powerful CEO wasn't there anymore, just a father, desperate and afraid. Lily squealed, launching herself into his arms. "Daddy!" Marcus caught her, his arms wrapping around her tiny frame, pulling her against his chest like he never intended to let go. His eyes squeezed shut, his jaw clenched tight as he buried his face in her curls. "Oh, baby," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I was so scared I thought I lost you." Lily giggled, oblivious to the weight of his words. "I was waiting for you, but you didn't come. Miss Nia took care of me." Marcus's eyes snapped open. Slowly he lifted his gaze and locked onto Nia. The shift was immediate. The warmth in his eyes drained away, replaced by something sharp, scrutinizing. He set Lily down carefully, keeping a protective hand on her shoulder, his expression unreadable as he took a slow step forward. "You found her," he said, his voice measured. Nia straightened, meeting his gaze. "Yes, sir. She was alone outside last night. She had a fever, so I took her home to keep her safe. I planned to find her family this morning." His jaw tensed, his gaze flicking over her, searching for something. Deception, perhaps, an ulterior motive. He found none. After a long beat, he exhaled. The tension in his shoulders eased just slightly. "You stayed up with her all night?" Nia nodded. "She was burning up. I didn't have medicine, but I did what I could." Marcus's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Gratitude. Guilt. Something deeper. Another long pause. Then, finally, he spoke. "Thank you." It wasn't just 2 words, it was something heavier, something real. A rare glimpse beneath the layers of power and authority. Nia nodded, unsure what else to say. Behind them, the office still buzzed with hushed whispers, the weight of the revelation settling over the employees like a thick fog. Marcus ignored them all. Instead, he turned back to Lily, smoothing a hand over her curls. "Let's go home, sweetheart." Lily pouted slightly. "Can Miss Nia come too?" Marcus stiffened. Nia's breath hitched. Then, after a long beat, he let out a low breath. "She has work to do, baby." Lily deflated, but nodded. "Okay." Marcus straightened, meeting Nia's gaze one last time. A pause, then a single nod. And just like that he turned, guiding Lily toward the exit, the little girl skipping beside him as if nothing had happened. Nia stood there long after they left, heart still pounding. She had done the right thing. But something told her this wasn't over. The office air felt heavier after they left, the murmurs still hanging in the background like an unspoken question. Nia stood at her desk, fingers tightening around the edge of her chair, her mind racing even as her body remained frozen. She had done the right thing, hadn't she? She had kept Lily safe, had given her warmth, had held her through the fever when no one else had been there. But it didn't change the fact that she had just spent the last 12 hours caring for the daughter of Marcus Thompson, the man who barely acknowledged her existence until today. And now he was gone. She exhaled slowly, forcing her fingers to unclench, forcing her breath to steady. She needed to move forward, needed to push past the stairs, needed to pretend like today was just another day. But it wasn't. She knew it the moment her phone buzzed again. The name flashed across the screen. Marcus Thompson. Her stomach tightened. She hesitated, pulse quickening, before she finally answered. "Sir, come to my office, now." Then the line went dead. The weight of every unspoken thought settled onto her shoulders, but she squared them and started toward the executive wing. The walk felt longer than usual, every pair of eyes in the office following her like a silent jury. By the time she reached the glass doors of Marcus's office, her nerves were coiled tight, but she refused to let it show. She stepped inside. Marcus stood near the window, hands in his pockets, staring out over the city. The skyline was painted in muted grays, the afternoon light filtering through thick clouds. He didn't turn when she entered. He didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "You didn't call the police?" It wasn't a question. Nia's jaw tensed. "No, sir." He exhaled sharply, finally turning to face her. His expression was unreadable, though something flickered behind his eyes. Something searching, something guarded. "Why?" She held his gaze, unwavering. "Because I didn't trust them to do right by her. A black woman finds a lost white child in the middle of the night? That's a headline waiting to happen, and not one that ends well for me." Something in his expression shifted. He studied her, as if seeing her for the first time, as if peeling back layers he hadn't bothered to look past before. "You stayed up all night with her," he said after a pause. "She was sick." "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Silence settled between them, heavy, charged. Marcus's fingers tapped once against the window pane before he finally pushed off the glass, moving toward his desk. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a checkbook, and clicked his pen. "How much?" Nia blinked. "Excuse me?" He didn't look up. For your trouble, name a price. The words hit her like a slap. A slow, burning anger coiled deep in her chest. She inhaled sharply through her nose, steadying herself, forcing her voice to remain calm even as her... You think I did this for money? Marcus finally met her gaze, his brows slightly furrowed, as if her reaction confused him, as if this was how he fixed problems, how he fixed people. Nia took a slow step forward, her voice low, firm. I didn't pick up your daughter off the street because I wanted a payday. I didn't hold her through the night while she burned up with a fever because I was expecting a check. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Because she needed someone, and because you weren't there. Marcus's jaw tightened, his grip on the pen stilled. For the first time he looked ashamed. The silence stretched long between them. Then he sighed, setting the pen down, running a hand over his jaw as if trying to wipe away the weight of the last 24 hours. You're right, he admitted, voice lower now, stripped of its usual sharp edge. I wasn't there. Nia didn't respond. There was nothing to say to that. Another pause, then he shifted, pulling something else from his desk, a business card. He slid it across the smooth wooden surface toward her. What is this? She asked, hesitating before reaching for it. An opportunity. His voice was steady again, but there was something new beneath it, something real. I looked through your employee records, Carter. You're overqualified for the work you're doing. You have the skills, the drive. What you don't have is the degree to move you forward. Nia's throat tightened. She glanced down at the card. It wasn't a check, it wasn't hush money. It was a fully funded scholarship program. Marcus leaned forward, elbows resting on his desk. You want to do more than push numbers around in a cubicle? Take this, go back to school. Finish what you started, and when you're done, come back. There'll be a place for you here, a real one. Nia stared at him, emotions swirling in a tangled mess inside her chest. She had spent years fighting to prove herself in a system designed to overlook her, years knowing she was just as capable, if not more, than the people promoted over her, and now here was a man who had barely seen her before today, offering her something she had never been given before. A real chance. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the card. You don't owe me anything, she said quietly. No, Marcus agreed. I don't. But I do owe my daughter the knowledge that when someone does the right thing, they aren't left behind because of it. Nia exhaled slowly, letting the weight of his words settle. Then finally she nodded. Marcus leaned back in his chair, watching her for a moment before speaking again, softer this time. Thank you, Nia. She looked up at him, expression unreadable. You're welcome, sir. And with that she turned, slipping the business card into her pocket, stepping out of his office with her future finally, in her own hands. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.